Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of us to the November 2013 meeting of the Murfreesboro Parks and Recreation Commission. This time I'd like to call on Mr. Ricky Turner for our prayer and pledge.
Let us pray. To our God and our Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for this day and for all your many blessings. We thank you for the country that we live in, the opportunity of the choices and the freedoms that we enjoy and sometimes take for granted. We ask you, Heavenly Father, to be with this commission, this city, its leadership, and all who call Rutherford County and the surrounding cities our home. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ricky. And first on the agenda is new business, and we have Rachel Singer here. I'm sorry, I forgot the minutes. You have the minutes before you. If you'll take a second and look over them, and then I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Hearing no comments, I move for passage.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Now we can move on to new business. And Lanny, the first item is consideration of a wildlife camp, and Rachel is here to tell us about that.
Hi, how are you guys doing today? I'm seeking your approval for the addition of Wildlife Camp to be added to our summer camps that are hosted at the Wilderness Station. Wildlife Camp would be a great opportunity to fill a niche with a growing trend in this community that I don't believe is being done anywhere else locally. So I think it would be a great opportunity. I think this camp would expose and foster an appreciation for Tennessee's wildlife and outdoor sports that could last a lifetime for these kids. Wildlife Camp will replace Reptile Camp this year, which the past few years has been decreasing in popularity. But I believe that Wildlife Camp, we will still be able to provide the educational components for respecting our natural world that we stress so much in Reptile Camp, while also adding a lot more excitement to Tennessee's outdoors and wildlife. Some examples of activities that we'll provide this week will be fishing, kayaking, skeet shooting, archery, reptile research, birds of prey program, and outdoor cooking. The fees that I'm proposing would be $150 for the week, and this would be comparable to our adventure camp fees. Also, the activities that we'll provide this week will also be comparable to adventure camp, where we will have to seek some outside contractors, which we'll have to pay. So I'm seeking your approval, and I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Rachel?
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Okay, Thomas, you're up. You going to start smart?
Sir, before I introduce the Start Smart program, I'd like to introduce a member of our athletics team who recently came on board as a part-time assistant athletic coordinator. Is Brittany Garrett. She's a transplant from Georgia. She's finishing up her degree in music and business administration at MTSU, but Brittany's been with us for a couple years as a site supervisor, and if you've been out at the ballparks, you've probably seen her. She does an excellent job, and she's done such a good job. We want to bring her in and on the programming end and continue to help us manage our facilities as well as work with us in the program. So she's going to be helping me out with Start Smart. Start Smart is a program that was developed by motor development specialists, and it's geared towards children ages 2 to 5, depending on the sport. But it helps prepare children for sports in a non-competitive environment while helping to prepare parents for those sports as well. Oftentimes we get parents that are new to youth sports, and their behavior and things is at no fault of their own. It's simply lack of knowledge of how to behave or what the expectations should be when their children are entering sports. The Start Smart program helps develop these children's skills by doing different stations and various activities while helping the parents work with their children together. So their expectations are brought into perspective. When they do enter a more competitive environment, the parents have kind of been acclimated to the youth sports field. The Start Smart program is an 8-week program. 6 weeks of that is purely skill development, where parent groups will work together to develop fundamental skills in each specific sport. The last 2 weeks will be geared towards a practice-type games or game-like scenarios, but are completely non-competitive and merely the fun of playing the game. The Start Smart program is a national recognized program through the National Youth Sports Alliance, and the equipment that is associated with that, each participant receives a package that would include specialized balls or different things. For example, they use the Cush ball in baseball to help learn to catch, make it a lot easier for them. So their registration fee includes the adaptive equipment that those children can take home, as well as we'd like to get them a team uniform similar to the rest of our sports that we offer to make them feel like a part of the team. And then also we have some equipment costs of our own, some modified goals or batting tees, based on what sport we're offering. So what I'd like to propose is a $50 fee for Start Smart. Typically, depending on the sport that we're offering, the equipment costs for those take-home equipment packages are anywhere from $30 to $35, and then on top of that would be a uniform, and they would be able to attend the 8-week program. Now, our initial purchase of equipment would be for the first session, then we'd be able to utilize that equipment for additional sessions in that sport. Sports include soccer, basketball, tennis, golf, baseball, and so we want to offer a variety of sports in conjunction with the seasons that are going on. Rather than a 3-year-old stepping up and playing in a 5-year-old baseball league, we want to be able to offer Start Smart baseball for those children to get them involved, but be within their own age restraints. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Thomas, I've got a question. Is this 1 day a week for 8 weeks, is it one time a year, or is it seasonal for each?
It'll be seasonal. For example, we are definitely planning on starting in baseball in the spring. We'll offer an 8-week baseball program. We'd like to offer basketball, but until we get our youth basketball numbers in and we get some hard deadlines on our renovations at McFadden, we may not be able to offer basketball this season. But in the spring, we would offer baseball. Perhaps in the summer we could offer golf and tennis, and then in the fall we would offer soccer and football. But the 8-week program would be for that particular sport for 8 consecutive weeks, 1 hour a week. The best thing about this is parents are doing it with their children, so it promotes activity, also helps parents learn how to help their children get better. So when they're at home, they're not just throwing the ball, they understand the skills, how the skills are developed.
Very good. Any other questions for Thomas? This time I'll entertain a motion that we accept this new program as proposed.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Thomas. Thank you. Very good. Thank you, Brittany, for coming to the meeting today and everything that you do for us. Okay, Melinda. Melinda Tate is up next, and we're going to have a luau on our island, huh?
Sounds like fun, doesn't it?
It does.
Today, I am seeking approval for a new program called Luau on the Island. It'll be held at the Gateway Island during spring break, April 3rd. It's a Thursday, and children ages 8 to 12 are invited to participate, and pre-registration will be required. The program will be limited to 25 participants in case it is inclement weather and we have to move to the reception center there. Participants will learn about the Hawaiian culture. while participating in fun activities such as hula lessons, ukulele lessons, make-a-lay, a limbo contest, and learn to speak Hawaiian. And a Hawaiian-themed snack will be provided as well. The fees that I'm proposing are $10 per person, and that will include the cost of the grass skirts that they will get to take home and the supplies needed to make the leis and the snacks. I'm seeking your approval for this program.
Any questions from Melinda?
How will you be promoting or marketing this program? Will it be placed on the website?
It'll be on the website, on Facebook, and in our Rec Connection. And, of course, we always send out media releases to all the media around town.
Any others? Do I have a motion that we add this new program?
Everybody loves a hooky law, so I say let's do it. I make the motion, yes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. Motion passes. Thank you, Melinda.
Thank
Sounds
you.
like fun.
It will be.
Hula skirts for everybody. All right, Bart, it's that time of the year.
Mr. Chairman and members of the commission, coming before you today to seek approval to offer our buy one, get one free special that we offer in December every year. This will be our 7th year of offering this program. It's the buy one, get one free on the monthly or yearly passes, and also we will be offering, with your approval, a 25% discount in January. This program has been very successful throughout the year. We will advertise with your approval, as you see on the screen, the 25% and also the buy one, get one free. We've already had a lot of our patrons ask about it. They started asking in the fall, so hopefully with your approval we'll be able to offer this again. And also our the figures from the past 6 years have been very good. As you can see on your screen, we'll have the results there. With your approval, like I say, we will be glad to offer this program. It'll start on the December the 9th through our buy one, get one free through December the 31st, and our 25% discount would start on January the 2nd and run through January the 31st. So with your approval, we are seeking to offer this very popular program again, not only, of course, at SportsCom, but at Patterson Park also.
Very good. Questions?
I got a question. I'm a patron and I've taken advantage of that program in the past. Do I need to recuse myself? Direct that, I guess, to our legal expert.
I'd say out of an abundance of caution, it would be good for you to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Any other questions? Well, we know that this has always been a very successful program, and I think our numbers kind of increase every year. So I'll entertain a motion that we accept the buy one, get one free as Bart has proposed to us.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. Thank you, Bart.
Thank you, Eddie. While I'm here, I'd also like to mention a couple of events coming up at SportsCom. December 6th, we're going to have our Customer Appreciation Day from 9 till 1. On December 13th, we'll have our lock-in at SportsCom, where kids will come check in at 7 o'clock Friday night and leave the next morning at 7 a.m. Saturday morning. And also, you are the first group who have officially been invited to the Polar Bear Plunge on January the 4th, 2014. So we're taking reservations now. So see me after the meeting. We'll sign you up.
Thank you,
All
Bart.
right. Thank you.
See if we can get some front row seats there. For that.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I'll sign up right after you do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next item on agenda, Lanny, you're going to tell us about, you're going to give us an update on our Greenway extension.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We have, for several years, been working on the extension of the Stones River Greenway, which starts at Old Fort Park and intends to go to Barfield Crescent Park. That was planned in 4 different phases. So far, we have finished 3 phases, ending on Barfield Crescent Road. Phase 4 would pick up there at the end of Phase 3 and take you all the way to Barfield Crescent Road. During these discussions and some of the finalizations of that, it came to the attention of the department and to the city that we had a resident that wanted us to relook at it. And with the direction of the council, that's what we did, and that was Mr. McCurry's property that's located on Barfield Crescent Road. So we've asked Lowson Associates, and we have Lee Davison here today from Lowson Associates, to relook at that for us. And Lee is going to come to the podium, and what he's going to show you is the original route that we had planned for Phase 4, and he's going to show you a couple of proposals that we looked at. One was to reroute the trail to the front of Mr. McCurry's property, and then the other was to put it on the opposite side of the property. And in doing that, it caused some, I guess, some additional type of planning and approvals that we're going to have to consider if that is the wishes of the commission and the council to move forward. So where we've gotten to is we have the original proposal, and then we have three options. Really, one would be to move it in front. The others would be to divide it where we have a section called 4A and a section called 4B. And so without getting too far into Mr. Davison's presentations, I'll yield to Mr. Davison and let him go from there.
Thank you, Lanny. Thanks for having me here today. We have been working with city staff over the last few months to come up with the best solution for Phase 4 routing. And what we're looking to is a way to move forward with Section 4, not delay, but go ahead and look at other options also. So what we've come up with is a plan to go ahead and move forward with what we're going to call Phase 4A. Section 4A would include everything we can build around this little study area that we're looking at. And we've met with TDOT, and TDOT has approved us to move forward with those sections so it doesn't delay construction. So we're looking at moving forward with that very quickly. And 4A would include from the end of for Section 3 all the way down to South Ridge, with a small trailhead down at the end of South Ridge Drive. And I'm sorry that this map is so small, but when you stretch things out over 3.5 miles, you kind of get a little small. So Section 4A would not only include that section, getting people, I don't know if anybody's noticed on Barfield Road, but several cars that tend to park down at the end of Phase 3 for access. This would allow us to add 2 parking lots, one along Barfield Road that would contain, I believe it's 14 spaces, and then one at the end of South Ridge Drive that would include 13 spaces. So that should alleviate that issue with parking along Barfield Road. Not only that section, but the state has also told us if we want to come from the other direction to get things started, we can also come from Barfield Crescent Park, where the original end of Phase 4 was proposed, and come up and bring our trail all the way up to where we can have connectors up to just beyond, I guess it would be to the west side of the river, and connect back up to the sidewalks along Veterans Parkway. So what we could do is build 2 pieces of trail and then connect the middle once we have a decision on this section that's in question. These 2 sections, the first section is 2,300 feet. The section down from Barfield Crescent Park is 3,800 feet. So we're talking about some substantial sections of trail. They do include some trailheads. They both connect. If for some reason the middle section didn't happen, they would still be good pieces of trail that connect things. They wouldn't be trails to nowhere. They include some bridges, some boardwalks, and our plans are to move forward with that with the approval of City Council. As far as the option for what we're calling 4B now, that section of trail that we studied was about 2,000 linear feet. Section B in total would be about 7,900 feet. So we're talking about a pretty large 1.5 mile area of trail. My coloring, and I don't know if you can see it from where you're sitting, but the orange coloring is the original route. The original route crossed at an existing bridge. We were going to replace that bridge and share it as a driveway bridge and a trail bridge. And it continues on the west side of the Stones River down behind Mr. McCurry's property, which is his home would be about, I think it was about 50 feet off of the trail, and continue on the west side all the way down to where we're ending 4A. Option A that we looked at was to move the trail out in front of Mr. McCurry's house along Barfield Crescent Road. There were several issues with that. Mr. McCurry wasn't happy with that. Safety was the biggest factor. We were really worried about putting people right there on the road, and that's a big reason that the majority of the section of trail crosses the river and is on the opposite side from the roadway. What we looked at next was what we call Concept 2, and that would be remaining on the east side of the river and not using the existing bridge crossing, but coming down beyond Mr. McCurry, well, actually almost beyond Mr. McCurry's property, and crossing with a new bridge. That brought in a couple issues that we had to work through. First of all, our original flood study, we were replacing a bridge, which is much easier to do than putting a new bridge across the river. So that's the first thing we've been looking at. Also, with this new bridge, we're going to have to bring it up higher to get out of the flood plain. So this bridge will be elevated. It'll be a much more substantial structure than what our original plans were for. It also kind of changes the dynamic of the property acquisitions. Mr. McCurry's property is almost unaffected, and I do have a map showing Mr. McCurry's property. Mr. McCurry's property originally was planned to be a full acquisition. Now what we're looking at is a very small acquisition on the southern boundary of his property and a temporary construction easement to get a bridge in. So basically what we're looking at is this small corner would be the only acquisition for Mr. McCurry. Now, when you move it over to the other side, we affect some other property owners. So we've had meetings, or a meeting with Mr. Steve Maloney, and I've had telephone conversations. We're trying to get a meeting set up with Mr. Morris. Those are the two property owners that would be affected with this change. Mr. McCurry met with us 2 days ago, and he seemed very happy with this routing. He had several questions, seemed enthusiastic about the Greenway at that meeting. So I also brought a couple of pictures of a structure. This is actually a structure that we did down in just in the outskirts of Atlanta, and this is very similar to what we would be talking about for the crossing. The bridge that we would be proposing would have a concrete deck in it, but other than that, it would look very similar to what you see here with ramps coming down off of each side of it. But that's, I think that about covers it. If you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer anything I know, and Lanny probably, or David Ives.
Any questions for Lee?
The little corner section that's on the McCurry's property right now that you've got highlighted in green, that's primarily back behind the volunteer fire station,
It's
correct?
almost completely behind the volunteer fire station, and it's almost entirely in the water. There's very small little island-type land masses out there, and we will have a pier coming down into that. But other than that, the entire trail in his area will be elevated as a bridge.
And what about the other two landowners who, say for instance, if they oppose, where do we go from there?
Mr. Maloney, we met with about 3 weeks ago, I guess, and he wasn't opposed. He said he understood. He did have a few concerns. There's no concerns that I don't think we can't address. Mr. Morse, we've been trying to set up a meeting with him. Like I said, I kind of explained to him over the telephone what we were looking at, but we're still waiting for that meeting.
Can you put that first exhibit back up, the entire extension? I can't get it in my mind where Mr. McCurry's property is.
Mr. McCurry's property is right here, where the pink wraps around the front.
I can't see colors.
Mr. Tips, if you're familiar with Barfield Crescent or Barfield Road,
Yeah.
the new fire station,
Right next door.
he's north, his property is immediately north of the new fire station.
But looking at the exhibit where it says original routing, and there's an arrow leading, is that the
Yes, sir,
vicinity?
that's his property right there.
Okay. And, okay, you were talking about option or concept 1, revised routing concept 1. What was the issues with it?
That one was ruled out very early because Mr. McCurry was opposed to it running in front of his house, and also because of some safety issues with the road. There's some talk that that road may be widened at some point, straightened out some, and we would really be infringing in the area that road would be expanded also. So there were several issues with that route.
And to date, we haven't, you're going to affect 2 other people with the plan that, I guess you're recommending that we go with concept 2?
I believe if the original routing is not going to be followed, concept 2 is definitely the best option.
And on the lower portion of that, the way it's set up, it's going to go across that bridge on Veterans Parkway?
Yes, sir.
It will go under it.
Go under it?
It will go
And
under
then it will utilize the old bridge that was on Barfield Crescent Road, which is now, if you look at it, has dirt and grass on it, but
Yeah.
we'll take that off
Yeah.
and reuse the old bridge.
Okay. And so the price tag is about a $500,000 increase?
Yes, sir. The number that we have, and this is an opinion of cost, including all re-engineering, all surveying, property acquisitions and everything, we're looking at about $550,000 difference.
And we would have had to pay what to Mr. McCurry to settle with him?
This number takes that into consideration, the difference.
And now we got to compensate a few others plus incur about a $500,000 in extra cost.
This number, the $550,000 includes the compensation to the others and his original acquisition also. So this includes all property acquisitions also.
But the prior budget did not include compensating Mr. McCurry?
It did.
It did?
Yes, sir.
It did. The appraised value of his property was in the arena of $270,000, $280,000, and then there was a cost we would have incurred to relocate him.
Mm-hmm.
And my recollection is our budgeted number for that was about $320,000, something of that neighborhood. Now, of course, this is the on all of these, this is the appraised value. Mr. McCurry had indicated he would not accept that. So when you get to court, you don't know what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Not likely he would get less, although that's possible. Not likely. And how much more he would get above what our appraiser valued his property at is speculation. Now the same with, so we reduce our cost, and I think that actually the relocation cost we had not factored in as part of the land cost, but we reduce our cost of land by $260,000, $270,000 because we're not going to buy the entirety of Mr. McCurry's property. The property we are acquiring is bare land, and it's at the edge of another property. It's a long ways from their house. It would not have the impact on these property owners that this trail would have had on Mr. McCurry's house. I mean, physically, it would have been possible to put the trail where we originally designed it and Mr. McCurry stay in his house. He did not want to do that, and I'm not sure at all that I would have wanted to do that if that were my house. But physically, it would have been possible. But his position was, if you're going to put the trail there, you're going to buy me out, take my property, and that had been a plan for some period of time. And this last spring, as we came closer to it actually happening, council asked us to take another look at that and see if there isn't a way to design around it. And of course, there is a way to design around it, but it costs more money primarily. We've got a lower land cost, but we've got primarily a much greater construction cost because of building a new bridge as opposed to a replacement bridge. And that's the big difference.
So the first plan was not going to take away, we weren't going to have to acquire his residence. We were going to, but it was going to require a portion of his property.
Right.
It was running it across his back porch, to be quite honest. It was actually just about running it across his back porch.
Okay.
It was close to his house.
Okay.
His
It would have been very
property,
close.
just very few feet. I mean, when I say few, 10 feet or so of the floodplain.
Okay.
So,
Which already impacts his
which
value of his
means you could
property
either
anyways,
put it
but,
in the floodplain, which isn't an option, or you could get it out of the
Yeah.
floodplain, which puts it on his back porch almost.
Yeah. So I know a lot of this project has utilized a lot of Fed funds.
Yes.
That's correct.
Is that also
yes.
is there going to be some cost share on this extra $550,000?
It would be considered under the 80/20. If you look at the financial analysis that I included, that was provided by Mr. Dana Richardson, who handles the finances, and it would go 80/20. But what we're showing is the full amount, and then you take these full amounts and you look at it in terms of an 80/20.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
And you can see in that analysis where he shows debit, you can see the estimated cost for 4A and 4B. And then if you look down at the bottom, you can see that there is a positive balance still left. Of course, these are engineers' estimates. You have to know that when we bid, we hope the engineers are right on with their estimates, but sometimes bids are a little higher, sometimes they're a little lower. And then during the course of the construction, there can also be some change orders, some additional costs that comes in. So we feel like we have ample amount remaining in terms of balance for funding for this project. So if we do need to go 4A and 4B, we should be financially in good condition.
Just affects our ability to do other things that are also important, doesn't it?
These funds would be specifically for Greenway.
Any other questions? Are we looking, what kind of motion are we looking for here?
Well, I think number one is we'd like to get the commission to say, yes, we want to complete the Greenway connection from Phase 3 where it's at now to Barfield Crescent Road. And then we're looking at, I think staff feels like the best alternative, and I think the engineer concurs at this point, would be to go with 4A and 4B. And so we would look for the commission to consider that and hopefully recommend that to the council.
Do I have a motion for that?
And 4A and 4B is basically moving the project across the river and adding the bridge.
It is, and that bridge would be in that little triangle that you saw on the south corner of Mr. McCurry's property.
I would move that we accept the plan as presented for 4A and 4B.
Very good. We have a second?
I would like to second, but I would like to also, if I could, contingency on that, considering that the other two landowners, to me, it seemed like without their approval of this, we, even though we can make a recommendation, it's really in their court. The ball's in their court whether they want to accept what the city has to offer for their property. I would like to first talk, if someone could talk to them and make sure they're on the same page before we really recommend any kind of proposal or approval, because, even though we may approve it, they could still be against the whole idea, because, anytime when you're dealing with somebody's land, people have a certain attachment to it because it is their property. I just wanted to throw that out.
Okay.
I would make this kind of a procedural thing, but I'm going to make a motion to defer this until they've had a chance to talk to all those property owners and then come back for recommendation.
Yeah.
Which would take precedent over his motion.
David, is that?
Shouldn't we vote on my motion first, and then if it gets voted down, then we'd have another motion? I mean,
I think a motion to table takes precedent over a primary motion.
I'm sorry?
I think a motion to table or defer would take precedence over that motion. Of course, I don't have a second yet, but I've made the motion.
And there was a second, though, I guess it was a qualified second to the first motion.
But it's based on the contingency.
I think he was really amending.
You're right.
He was amending the first motion.
That's effectively what Mr. Tips is asked to do. Your approval is contingent on, you wanted it to be contingent on the other people's acceptance of our proposals.
that could dramatically lengthen the amount of time involved in trying to complete this project, wouldn't it, David?
It could, and I would say that we've been in discussions with Mr. Maloney, who owns two separate tracts of ground. The first tract, they're north and south of each other. The northerly tract has always been had the trail across it. Now the southerly tract will have it, as well as the northerly tract on the east side of the river, as opposed to crossing over the west side and going down a couple of other properties and then onto McCurry property. And Mr. Maloney is, while he hasn't said yes and hasn't accepted the amount of money, he's not indicated that he would fight that. The second landowner, Mr. Morris, his house is also quite a ways away from, this is not at all, it's his backyard, but it's his backyard of 8 or 9 acres or something. It's not his backyard literally at his back door. Mr. Morris had previously, we had already acquired an easement on the part of his property that's under the river. On this project, because of the way it's located, we're attempting to acquire from top of bank to top of bank, or from wherever the trail is to the top of bank on the other side of the river. And so while the trail would have been across the river from Mr. Morris's property, we were still acquiring an easement on his property for the trail over the trip for the trail and the river both. He had agreed to that, and he, in the conversations, he's not indicated a great concern. And the fact of the matter is, if he's not in a situation where he's going to be displaced, if we cannot come to terms on a price, then we can settle the price through the eminent domain process, which we have a dozen. There is approximately 50 properties involved in this section of the trail, and I would say that we're in court on 25 of them. Some of those are only because we've got a mortgage company that's unresponsive, and we have to go through the condemnation process in order to take care of the mortgage company. Others is because they disagree with the amount we've offered, and we will try to resolve it, and if we can't, then ultimately we end up in court. Or we're in court, we ultimately end up with a judge or a jury telling us how much the price is going to be. So these two properties really would be no different than any of the other 48-some properties that we're acquiring for this trail. You know, pieces of properties. The McCurry situation was radically different because it did involve his home, and it involved a very close proximity to his home. And I do not at all discount his concerns. As I said, if that were me, I'm not sure I would have liked that at all. I probably would not have, in fact. Nonetheless, a decision that I think has pretty much been made by council now that not to take his property in order to make this for the trail. We'll still be putting an easement over a small portion of his property where the bridge will go, but we'll not take his home, not force him to relocate.
And there is quite a difference in the sense of different sides of the river, because the McCurry property, Mr. McCurry built that house some 29 years or so ago, prior to the establishment, I guess, of the Greenway system. The people on the other side were of the understanding that there was a Greenway system coming through, and if you look at where their fences and stuff are placed, most of them are placed back far enough that it appears, when you look from the riverbank, and this isn't an accurate measurement, but it looks like their houses are 100 yards away back up from where we're talking placing the trail. On the McCurry side of the property, it was within just a few feet of the house. So, there's no comparison when you're considering which side of the river would be the better location for it.
It was my understanding when this originally came to the council that everything was ready to be voted on and the other people were okay with it, all but Mr. McCurry. And now that he's satisfied, because that was a concern from the council, that we addressed Mr. McCurry's concern, who was the one that came, and correct me please if I'm wrong, to us
You're
with
correct.
the great concern. So now that we have Mr. McCurry satisfied with our plan, the others were already satisfied when it originally came. Was that all but Mr. McCurry?
I believe that's correct, but the thing is that by changing it to not impact Mr. McCurry, we are impacting two other people differently, nowhere near to the same extent that Mr. McCurry was impacted, but nonetheless, we are now impacting them more than we would have with our original plan. And so there's certainly we will need to reach an agreement with them, and whether that comes by negotiation or comes by a judge or jury telling us how much we'll pay, ultimately we will reach that. But again, that's not really any different than several of the other property owners up and down where they feel their property is worth more than our appraiser feels it's worth. Again, because we will not have the life impact upon either of these folks that we would have had on Mr. McCurry.
So right now you're saying that one property owner is okay with it and the other could be once you he makes contact back with you. Is that correct?
Yes.
But he has been spoken to, yes or no, before on the new proposal, the one
Yes.
that we're trying to get back with, and he wasn't particularly against it?
I have not personally talked with him on it. I believe Mr. Davidson did. There was supposed to be a meeting, and he had something come up that he couldn't make it to that meeting. And
We were supposed to have met last week, and things just didn't work out. So he was informed that the plans were still at Lanny's office, that he could come by there anytime and take a look at them. As of today, I don't think he has been by there. I made a phone call to him this morning to remind him that they were available anytime he wanted to come by and look at them. I have not heard back from him yet. But he has been, I discussed the kind of the overall what we were looking at. He has not seen a drawing like this to know exactly what's going on. But I did tell him that we were looking at putting the trail on his side of the river.
So you gave him a brief synopsis on the phone?
Yes, ma'am.
As to how it would impact his property, and at the time he didn't seem to, without looking at it, based on what you said, that opposed to it.
He didn't voice whether he was for it or against it. He basically set the meeting with me, and then it didn't work out where we could meet.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. I got a motion to defer this, to go ahead and wait till we get better confirmation. what is the harm of deferring this until maybe December? And that way, you all have had a chance to meet with these property owners and just get confirmation. I'm not understanding what, are we on a racetrack to get it done?
I would.
This is a half, you're talking about $550,000 increase in the project.
Right.
I'm just trying to get,
With the city's
understand
portion, the city's portion of that being approximately 20% of it, estimated as we, according with the funding that is available, according to Mr. Richardson. I don't know the answer to the parliamentary question, I'm sorry to say, of whether the motion to defer takes precedence or not. I would say, though, that with the qualified second, it's not that much different than the motion to defer. I would ask that you express your support for proceeding with Phase 4A, because we are able to move forward with the two components of 4A, which is starting at the current end and coming down to the parking lot that'll be in Southridge, and starting at the park and coming over to Veterans Parkway. We'll be in position, if we give your blessing and council's blessing tomorrow night, to continue the process to move forward with that and hopefully get that underway soon. Then in terms of which way we go on 4B, I'm not sure there's as much urgency for that, because we're going to have some additional environmental approvals. There's going to have some additional, Lee may be able to address this, but I'm sure he can better than me, but there's some preliminary steps that have to be taken with 4B, whichever way we do it, that don't have to be taken with 4A. So I would like to separate those two if we could, for one thing. And I guess
I don't have an objection to that.
I guess my question would be, why is, I mean, generally we forward things on to the council without a great deal of concern about the money. I mean, and of course the council will make a decision as to whether or not the money should be spent or not spent. But as far as the Parks and Recreation Commission is concerned, I think our responsibility is to determine what is the best plan of action to take for them from this point forward to try and progress with the Greenway system, and to delay it. I look at that as delaying soccer fields or delaying tennis courts or delaying anything else. If we're just putting it off for the sake of negotiation and waiting for the contract and the legal part to be completed, that would apply to 25 properties, and we've probably got properties where we've already got Greenway system functioning on that we haven't agreed to.
we do.
And if we
Not
do,
many, but we do.
right.
One big one, in fact.
And if that's the case, then I mean we could be putting this off for many, many years. And of course, if we've already acquired the funding to do it, we've already the city's looking at 20% of this actual number, I think, that we're presented with, which to complete this section of the Greenway system to me seems almost irrelevant to hold it back over the city's portion, which is going to be about $100,000, it looks like. But I don't think we have a big option as far as this board's concerned, because the council's already said basically we're not going to ask this family to move out of this house so that we'll have a place to go walk our dogs. And so with them having lived in that house for 30 years, I'm not sure what the point in delaying it is, but other than to say we delayed it. I mean,
right. I would agree with Mr. Smotherman that does that. My understanding is, I mean, I don't think you approve projects with complete blinders on, but the budget of a project like this is probably more of a council consideration. And if I would agree that the concept, the plan, if this board feels that it's a good idea to run the trail down there and to do the second bridge, that will work for the Greenway system, then I do believe that approval would be in order, and the details will be worked out later. And if for some reason we can't acquire a piece of property, then obviously we're going to have to come back to the planning table, and as we are now, when a decision was made not to acquire a property, we come back to the table and look at it and see where our options are and where we go from here. So I guess, essentially staff has come up with two options, one of which is about as bad as the first original plan, and the other of which we feel will work. There's pluses and minuses to everything. One of the pluses of this plan is a few dollars, and I don't say $500,000 is just a few dollars, but in the scheme of things, this is a fairly extensive trail project, and if the board believes that it's going to work that way, then I believe approval would be in order.
Well, back to my motion. Since we're not going to have a parliamentarian to rule on it, I will withdraw it. But you still have a second that's almost an amendment, and you haven't ruled on that either. So I say, Mr. Turner, it's, you know,
Could I ask
you have
one
a qualified
quick question?
second.
Sorry. Could I ask that 4A be considered as a standalone approval so that one could move forward and be under construction? That's the one that's kind of time sensitive to what we expect to get under construction so that it fits into the window of construction for best weather. 4B, we expect it to be about a year before we can move forward with it with the new studies and things that have to take place anyway. 4A is the one that's kind of an imminent one to be bid out as quickly as possible. And it does not affect whichever option of 4B is chosen. 4A would still be the same, whether it's option A, B, or C.
That's correct. And they follow the original route that we had intended in the first. And it does connect, like Lee says, to South Ridge. It eliminates one of the safety issues that we've got on Barfield with the parking. And then for the park, it does connect because Veterans now is getting very busy. You go out there's a lot of traffic on Veterans Parkway, and we need a safe way to get people across Veterans Parkway, so that provides that safe crossing for those residents. And then 4B, like he said, that's going to take a while. You know, in hindsight, if Mr. McCurry had said, I guess, what he had said within the last 6 months or so, back when we were doing our preliminary route, we may not even be here. We may have been across the river anyway. Yeah. So that's one of the things that we just have to look at, and we could be in the same boat with Mr. Ives. Mr. Ives handles all the land. I just yield to what he does because he's very good at it. But he can tell you that that's not uncommon to negotiate with landowners and try to get the properties that we need for that acquisition.
Okay.
And the plan that goes along the roadway, if you sit on this property for any amount of time, the running a greenway system next to that roadway is not, that defies logic as far as the safety factor of it.
Mr. Smotherman, I remember when we were looking at this section, and one of the first drafts I think that Lowson Associates came out with was to hug the road all the way down. And I looked at it and I said, have you driven that road? And the curves, and that's why we swap over at South Ridge. So we can go over, and there was a greenway easement in that development. It showed on all the plats. And it's a little more difficult to build the greenway on that side, but it's a whole heck of a lot safer for everybody to not be where you see a car turned upside down or off in the ditch almost every day along that stretch of road. So we were looking at the safety of the participants. And, you know, one of the things when we met with Mr. McCurry, he told us the other day, he said, I know that y'all had looked at that section of trail out near the road. And he said, I remember there was a crash, and he said, and the flames from that crash actually melted that little plastic indicator where you had surveyed. And he said that's not, you made the right decision. That's an unsafe section of road. So putting it there, number one, you know, we want to look at the safety of the people that's on the trail. And number two, we don't know what that road is going to do in the future, whether that's going to become a 4-lane, a 3-lane, whether they're going to expand it. If it does, that means we're right back to the drawing board on trying to do something with that section of trail. So staff didn't think that was a viable option at all.
And I don't look at the greenway system as being a sidewalk system, which is basically what it is if you put it out next to the road out there and follow the road with it. I mean, we do try to keep it into the more natural areas where it's more scenic and somewhat more enjoyable to walk and bike and whatever it is that we're doing on it. But let me try this and see if this doesn't help our situation some. Let me make the motion that we approve 4A as accepted.
All right, I have that motion,
I second that.
and I have a second. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. That motion passes.
Okay. Now I'd like to make the motion that we accept 4B as presented.
I have a motion to accept 4B. Do I have a second?
I second 4B.
I have a second. All in favor, say
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
I think the noes went out. Is that correct? I'm sorry. Do we need to have a hand vote?
Well, I guess we need to call, we just
Call
maybe a
roll.
roll call vote, please,
Please.
I suggest.
May I ask a question before this? Well, is it proper to ask a question?
Well, let's just go ahead and have a roll call vote. The motion is to approve 4B as presented by staff, I guess, right? Do you have a question about what's before you?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Okay.
I do on that.
Yeah.
You stated, and this is regarding the motion that's on the floor now to accept B as presented,
Yes.
but also in your presentation just then, you talked about, and I do know, things that come before the council that we already, when we approve something, we have people that come up that do have problems. So is that any different from what we're doing now, voting on now, because we have people that have problems with things and you go to court or either you settle out of court? So it's no different than what we're talking about now, right? Like easements and
There
everything?
won't be a public hearing on it, I'm assuming.
I don't anticipate any public hearings before council on 4B.
No, I'm saying now we have things pinned, even though we voted on it, we have people that it involves their property that
Right.
we are trying to settle with or negotiate with.
That's
why
correct.
I'm saying it's no different with what we are doing now on cases than this case, is it?
That's correct. It is unknown whether.
Yeah, that's
Mr.
my question, I know.
Whether
Yeah.
two landowners will accept the amount
Right.
that the city, which we haven't actually made offers yet because we haven't formally measured out the property we're going to take. We don't have the surveys of how many acres.
Right.
And so we haven't made formal offers. They know, I think, probably what in general, what the offer will be, but we haven't made the offer.
Right.
We don't know if they'll accept that offer or if we'll have to go to court
Exactly.
to establish the amount of compensation.
You answered my question, thank you.
Okay. So that, a roll call vote, right?
Correct. To accept option
To accept 4B as presented.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good. Motion passes.
3-2? 1, 2,
4-2.
4-2, right? Normally, I don't have your rules of procedure in front of you, but normally it's a majority of those present and voting. If you have a quorum, then it's a majority.
Majority of the quorum.
Very good. Very good discussion. Thank you, Lee. We look forward to this section getting complete.
Yes, and we certainly appreciate the debate. We know that this is a sensitive issue all the way around. Mr. McCurry was relieved when we talked to him Monday. When we talked to Mr. Maloney the other day, he was good, but he knew that it was going to affect more of his property, and I'm sure when we have the discussion with Mr. Morris, there'll be some other questions too. But we'll continue with those. And really what we'd like to do, and hopefully council tomorrow night will move that we can move forward with 4A and continue with 4B in the direction that we're headed. But we're looking at probably 180-day construction for 4A. And Mr. Davison, when would you project, if council is good tomorrow night, we would start construction of 4A?
City staff is reviewing the plans right now. We have 4A completed and ready as it said. City staff is reviewing it, and we expect TDOT to take about 3 weeks with it. So it'll probably be somewhere right at the first of the year in the streets.
So by the end of the summer, we could be complete with that first
And
phase.
hopefully the next section will be right behind.
Okay. Just to give you a snapshot of timetable.
Very good.
Yeah, I think I might have made a comment a while ago that we don't look at the price, and I think I probably said that incorrectly. I think we always look at the price because I do think it matters, and I don't want to let that go without making a comment. I do think it's going to affect people no matter which side of the river we go on. I do think we're making the right decision in going to the other side of the river and having the least amount of impact on an individual's home versus an individual's property. So I'm certainly understanding that, some people look at a greenway system as an amenity, having it next to their property, and some people look at it as not being quite as advantageous to having it located next to their property. And certainly the perspective of that varies from person to person, and some people, of the many people we deal with, it's not uncommon, I know, for us to have to negotiate the price. And so the price does matter, but at the same time, as far as the project's concerned in the Greenway system through this section, we've already made a headlong commitment into it, I think, to the point that we need to go ahead and complete this section and go ahead and connect Barfield Park to the Greenway system. So I think the sooner we get it done, the better. And thank you for the presentation you did on it and the work that's gone into it so far.
Thank you.
Very good. Next up is our marketing coordinator, Becky Johnson. Lots of events coming up.
Yes, good afternoon. We have a couple exciting things coming up. We have our first event is our 15th annual Fall Harvest Hayride. This, traditionally those who've gone to it in the past would look for it in October, but since it's still in the fall, it's Friday, November 15th. And you'll get to listen to music as you roast marshmallows, eat s'mores, have an old-fashioned hayride along the Greenway. It's sponsored in part by the Friends of the Greenway, and it's fun for the whole family. And once again, it's Friday, November 15th from 5:30 to 8 o'clock p.m., and it is $2 per person at the General Bragg Trailhead. Another program we have that is timely is Santa Belly Boot Camp. The holidays are coming up fast, Thanksgiving, Christmas. So to assist you with your efforts to not gain a Santa belly over the holidays, they've added a weightlifting boot camp on Sunday afternoons in November and December where you can build muscle, burn fat, and reduce some of your holiday stress. And that is on Sundays from 1:30 to 2:30 p.m. at Sportscom in the exercise room, and that is a premium pass to participate in. Then we have our family campout. That includes guided night hikes, owl prowls, children's activities and games, campfire fun, and music that will make it a camping experience to remember. And that is Saturday, November 16th through the night into Sunday, November 17th at the Barfield Crescent Park Backcountry Campground. The cost for that, it's $10 for adults, $5 for children 5 through 12. It's at the Wilderness Station. They do ask that you pre-register and that you sign up for the Wilderness Awareness Workshop before you participate in the campout.
And the phone number for the Wilderness Station is on the screen. It's 217-3017. We hope to see everybody come and camp out in November. And for all of our programs and events, you can call our main office at 890-5333. You can go to our website and download our Rec Connection, and you can like us on Facebook and follow us and see what we've got going on.
Any questions for Becky? Some real neat events.
Yes.
I think we need a workshop for some of us that already have a Santa belly like me. Teach us how to be Santa. So thank you very much. Let me ask you, how did the haunted hayride go and the participation there?
It went really well, and the trail was done very professionally. I know we got a lot of good comments on not only the haunted trail, which is the Old Screen Road, but also on the not-so-haunted trail, the booze, everything for the carnival. I just thought it was really done very professionally, and I rode the Old Scream Road, and I know I rode with Melinda to take pictures, and I was saying her picture's probably going to be fuzzy because every time she tried to take one, she was jerking, but they turned out pretty good. But Thomas and his crew did a great job, and a lot of other staff for the Parks Department. And then we get a lot of volunteers that love to come out and work those trails. So I think it was a good time for
Very
them.
good. I'm sure it was. Thank you, guys. Okay. We've got one agenda item that we need to add, coffee marathon. Who is?
That's Allison Davison.
All right, Allison. Give us the buzz on the marathon here.
I just had a cup of coffee, so I am buzzing. And you said about help for those who already have the Santa belly. We have that, Patterson and Sportscom, so you just come on out, see me or Chad, and we can help y'all with those bellies. The Santa Boot Camp is mine, so come on out and enjoy that too. It's fun. It relieves my stress. Okay, so we have, starting in January, we would like to do a coffee marathon. It's not my deal, it's my assistant's, Jennifer's. What we want to do is we're looking at kind of showcasing some local coffee shops. So we have found 7 local coffee shops that are situated in a way where we can have a safe running route, meaning that there are sidewalks, or we have one at Sportscom, so that's actually within our park. So we have 7 coffee shops that we are enlisting to kind of participate with this with us. If you add up the routes together, it will equal a marathon amount. So we have maps. If you sign up for the program, you'll be given maps of all 7 of the coffee shops. It's a loop, so you start at the coffee shop, you end at the coffee shop. Each coffee shop has agreed to have a map available so you can look there. You also have a little passport where you can mark it off. So it's about 3 months that you can go. You can run your marathons, get to say that you did a coffee marathon. At the end, we've actually, I'm going to leave my apple in there. We've actually teamed up with a local pottery maker. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Red Oak Pottery. They're in Las Casas. Mr. Heim and his wife, they come to Sportscom all the time, and so they have agreed to let us purchase the coffee mugs. This one's mine, you can't have it. But so you will receive a coffee mug and a decal that I don't have, but it'll be really cool, promise. So you get a coffee mug and a decal if you finish the coffee marathon. It's a $25 fee to do all that. Have any questions about it?
Oh, this sounds neat.
It should be fun. Coffee before or after, just depends on what you're...
And when are you looking at starting it?
We're looking at starting at the sign-ups. We're going to start sign-ups in January, on January 4th. And we'd like for it to run till about March, the end of March. I had it written down. We'd like for it to end March 29th. But it's a kind of on-your-own honor system. So you can go and sign up and do it on January 4th and finish it within the week, or you can have the entire 3 months to finish it. And we would do sign-ups at Sportscom, and we'll have all that, all the sign-up stuff there.
Very good.
You sign up right after the polar bear plunge.
Right in there, too, yeah. And the Santabelli thing.
We actually will have a table present, so you can
Making
sign
the
up
polar
for
bear
it.
plunge sound better to me all the time when it calls
It
running.
is, it's sounding better. Very good.
Sounds like a really good program. I move that we accept as presented.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are none. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Sounds like fun. That looks like all we've had for new business on the agenda. Lane, do you have any other business for
No,
us?
sir, that's all the business we have to come before the commission.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank y'all very much.